It is time for my personal favorite time of the month, monthly reading wrap-ups. And this one is going to be a doozy because I read 18 books in the month of August. Don't ask me how that happened. I have no idea. So let's just get right into it. More of my in-depth thoughts and my ratings toward the 18 books that I read. My first read of the month was Spark of the Everflame, and this is a slow burn romantasy about DM, who basically her mom disappears and her family and really everyone thinks it has something to do with the king because DM's mother and DM herself are both healers and DM's mom was working for the king. So after the disappearance of her mother, DM is now doing some work for the king's heir and basically working as a spy against him. I thought that this book was very interesting, definitely a good series to get into because this is the first book of a series. It's also on Kindle Unlimited, I might add. I did give it a 3.5-star rating. I have really high hopes for the rest of the series just because the ending of this book was insane, I will say. So honestly, I think it's worth it just for the ending and the build-up of the rest of the series alone. I'm very excited to read book 2 and see what is going to happen. Next, I read Unsteady, and this book is about Reese, who is a hockey player, and Sadie, who is a figure skater. They attend the same college and end up meeting at the skating rink. And this book gives such Binding 13 vibes, it's not even funny. Reese had an accident on the ice, so he ends up having a lot of panic attacks, and Sadie is there to help him through that. And then Sadie comes from a very messy home life, and Reese tries to help her through that. Also, Reese's family is extremely rich. Also, like Binding 13. I thought this was a very enjoyable, cute read with depth to the characters and the plot of the story as well. I just think that Reese and Sadie really bring out the best in each other, and they helped each other overcome these obstacles that they were facing. I gave this one a 3-star rating. Next, I read Wild Love by Elsie Silver, and this was so good. It's about Ford and Rosie. Ford is a billionaire. He owns like a music record label or something to do with music. And then Rosie is from the big city, but she recently lost her job because of some BS that happened. And she decides she needs to step back from her boyfriend, she needs to step back from her city life, and she goes back to the small town where she grew up and where she knows Ford from. Basically, Rosie is Ford's best friend's little sister, so they all grew up together. Ford ends up hiring Rosie at his company and ends up having some feelings about her. She ends up having feelings about him, and Ford is so worried about Rosie's brother's reaction for some reason. Like, I get that they're best friends, but they are also grown adults, and like, they just should not care. So honestly, I feel like that is what was holding me back from giving this a 5-star rating. I did give it a 4.5-star rating. I was just like getting irritated. Like, Ford, why do you care so much about your best friend's opinion? Like, why would he care that you're dating his sister when you're all adults? And like, Ford treats Rosie so well. So it's like, as long as he's not being a horrible human being, why is it a big deal? But yeah, this was very good. Loved Ford and Rosie's relationship, the banter before they like become in a relationship and while they're in a relationship. And Ford is also a single father, and the dynamic with his daughter is so cute and fun, and he kind of just found out about her, so they're still learning to get to know each other, and then Rosie is there to help him along the way. It is so sweet. This is a definite recommendation. Then I read House of Glass, and this book is about Stella, who is a best interest attorney. I think that's what they call it, and basically she is working for this couple after their nanny gets pushed out of a window and falls to her death. The husband was cheating on the wife with the nanny. Now they're getting a divorce, and they have a 9-year-old daughter, Rose. So Stella is there to basically be able to figure out who the best suited parent for Rose to go full custody with is. It has an interesting twist to it because some people are convinced that Rose has something to do with the death of the nanny, since Rose has not spoke since the death. So while Stella is trying to do her job as a best interest attorney, she's also like somewhat being a detective, seeing if Rose did have something to do with the death. Very entertaining, very thrilling, had twists I did not see coming, 4-star rating. Done and Dusted by Lila Sage. This was such a short and sweet cowboy romance. It's about Clementine and Luke. Clementine is a professional barrel racer and she's moved away from home to go and pursue that dream, and she ends up coming back to the small town of Meadowlark, her hometown, after an accident. Now, she really does not like talking about this accident. She hasn't even told everyone about this accident. She kind of just like left the barrel racing industry all of a sudden. And her first night back in town, she runs into Luke, who is like her childhood nemesis. Luke also grew up with Clementine and her brothers because he did not have a very good childhood home life. So Clementine's family basically took him in. And while Luke and Clementine found each other annoying growing up, now as adults, they seem like they have some sort of chemistry together. But the same thing with this as Wild Love is like Luke does not think he can be with Clementine because he thinks that her older brothers will freak out. Which, like, again, I don't understand why adults in books are thinking and acting like this. Like, really, who cares as long as everyone is happy? But this was super fun, a little bit spicy. I gave it a 3.5-star rating. Now, going out of order a little bit because I didn't actually end up reading these two books back to back, but then Swift and Saddled. This is the second Rebel Blue Ranch series book. And this one is about Clementine's older brother, Weston. And Weston is really just like there. He's been working on his family's ranch for years. He doesn't really see himself doing anything else. But he did get tasked with a project of fixing up one of the houses on the ranch. So he's very excited for that and hires Ada to come and help him. Ada is a city girl, interior designer, not used to the small town life, country whatsoever. But oh my gosh, I love this book. I gave this one a 4-star rating, so I did like it better than the first book. I just feel like there's a lot more depth to the characters in this book and like bigger things to overcome within their relationship because they are so different. And Weston, my heart just goes out to him, the things he struggles with, like depression, anxiety. Definitely recommend the Rebel Blue Ranch books. Next is How the King of Elfhame Learned to Hate Stories, and this is a novella for the Cruel Prince series. I read the Cruel Prince series about 2 years ago and absolutely loved it, so I had to read this at some point. And it's really just a backstory of Cardinmore, stories about literally him and why he is the way that he is. But this was so sweet and I loved getting glimpses of him and Jude's relationship. Like seriously, a must read if you love the Cruel Prince series. And it's also illustrated, so those are beautiful. This was overall a 4-star read for me. These Hollow Vows by Lexi Ryan honestly might have been my most surprising read this month. I was not really going to read any fantasy books until we got closer to the fall, but I just felt the need to pick this up, and boy am I glad I did. This book follows Bree, who is human, but after her sister gets kidnapped by the Unseelie King, Bree goes to the fairy realm and she tries to get her back. And in order to get her sister back, Bree has to make a deal with the Unseelie King to basically get relics from the Seelie court. And Bree decides that the best way to do that is to pose as the potential bride of the Seelie court heir. So this just gave me major ACOTAR / The Selection vibes. Like if you mix the two together, this is what that book would be. I seriously love this so much. Like from page 1, it had me captivated, it had me hooked, and there is a love triangle, but I feel like it is done very well. And for me at least, there was a point where I did not know who I wanted her to end up with. Like both of them seemed like good suitors. Yeah, this book was crazy. There was a lot of stuff going down. She's obviously like working with both sides, you know, she is working for the Unseelie court to get the relics back from the Seelie court, but then she is also developing feelings for the heir of the Seelie court while she's doing that. And there is a big reason for that, but I'm not gonna say why because that would be a spoiler, but I was like, oh my gosh. And then the ending of this book, I was like, I need book 2 immediately. So that's what I did. I immediately had to pick up these Twisted Bonds. And I do think that this was a good sequel, not quite as good as the first book, since I rated the first book a 4.5 and I rate this book a 4. but still very good. It was very interesting to see what was gonna happen after the ending of the first book. And I am so glad that things happened the way that they did. I then read Reckless by Elsie Silver after not picking up it for a few months after Powerless. And I regret it so much because Reckless was a 5-star read for me. It was amazing. This one is about Winter and Theo, which after they have a one-night stand, Winter is pregnant. And I just loved this book so much, how much Theo really cares and loves about Winter, and he doesn't treat her the way that everyone else does. So many people in Winter's life do not like her or think she is the ice queen, but Theo is the only person who has never treated Winter like that. And this book was really just them, you know, working through being parents for the first time after this crazy thing that happened, literally just meeting each other, hooking up, and then getting pregnant. So it's them getting to know each other more, a lot of spice, but honestly so sweet and heartwarming as well. And then right after Reckless, I read Hopeless, and this is the last book in the Chestnut Springs series. This one is about Beau and Bailey. Beau is the military man who is back home after being MIA, and Bailey basically runs this bar that is in town. And this one is an age gap. I think Bailey is like 22 and then Beau is 35. But being able to see the way that they just bring out the best in each other throughout this book is really nice. Because Bailey has a horrible family, horrible dad, horrible brothers. Like, it is not a good living situation for her. So Beau is there to try and protect her and save her from that. Which Bailey, she doesn't need anyone to save her. She can take care of herself, but it's still sweet. And Beau obviously has a lot of trauma from being in the military and literally being missing in action. And Bailey is just like the ray of sunshine that he needs. This was very cute, very heartwarming once again, and I gave it a 4-star rating. Then I read Summer Romance by Annabelle Monaghan, and this book is about Allie and Ethan. Allie is a professional organizer, but she just feels like her life has been such a mess since her mom died, and then she's going through a divorce, and she has 3 kids to raise. And she ends up meeting Ethan, and he just treats her so much differently than she's been treated the last few years of her life, and honestly, like, the last decade of her life. But he is only gonna be in the town that Allie lives in for the summer, so she's like, it doesn't want to be anything serious because she doesn't want to get attached and then have to end things and be sad. I actually annotated this book, and I have a lot of annotations. If you can see, I have blue for like sad or emotional, red for romance, and then yellow for happy or just quotes that I like. So this book did have me in my feels. It made me feel a lot of emotions, but it did make me sad at the beginning, and then basically as it keeps going on, you can see how much happier Ethan is making her and how much he is just lighting up things in her life after she's had such a rough couple of years. And it's just a really beautiful relationship. I gave this one a 4-star rating. The Spell Shop is a cozy little fantasy read that is about Kyla, who is running from the big city. She works there as a library, and there is like a rebellion happening there right now. So she ends up stealing a bunch of spell books from the library and sailing off to her little hometown on an island. And there she decides that she is going to open a jam shop that also sells these spells and such. And it is pretty low stakes for the majority of the book. It gets a little bit higher stakes toward the end, but overall it is just cozy and low-key. I gave this a 3.5-star rating. I just genuinely really liked it when it was chill and she was like making jams. But then there is a lot more action at the end, and I was like, man, I wish we could have just like been making jams and stuff. But I'm assuming that's just me. So I think that people would definitely enjoy this, but I gave it a 3.5-star rating. Sorcery of Thorns. This was my biggest letdown of the month, and usually I don't try to like dwell on negatives of books because reading is subjective. I will tell you the majority of reviews on this book on Goodreads was 4 and 5-star ratings. So I am definitely the outlier because I gave it a 2-star rating. And I was so excited for this book because the whole premise of it, like there being magical books and libraries, sounds so fun and cool. But I was just bored the majority of this book. I even tried to listen to it on audiobook to see if that would help, and it did not. It just could not keep my attention. I really didn't care about what was going on. I didn't even care about the romance. And I feel like that is saying a lot for me. So like I said, I don't like talking negatively about books, but I will just say this one was not for me. The Game Changer by Lana Ferguson. This book is about Ian, who is a professional hockey player, and Delilah, who is a professional baker and actually has her own baking show. So Delilah's show is not going as well as it usually is. So her PR team is like, you know, we gotta get these ratings up. What are we gonna do? And Delilah suggests like maybe bringing someone from the hockey team on since they're in Boston. So hockey is very big there. And she was like, it'd just be funny having these big brawny hockey players like baking little pastries and stuff. Like that would bring the ratings up. So the hockey player that they choose to bring on the show is Ian, because he is also going through some PR things right now. Like he could definitely have a good word put in for him. Now Ian and Delilah actually know each other because Ian is Delilah's brother's best friend. And like childhood best friends. These three have known each other their whole lives. So Delilah and Ian kind of reconnect because they haven't talked in a few years when he goes on her show. And something ends up happening on the show and fans start speculating like, oh my gosh, are they dating? So then their PR teams are like, you guys need to fake date. And obviously in a fake dating book, we all know what happens, real dating. And this was very spicy, like spicier than I usually read. There was one scene in particular in a car and I was like, oh my gosh. But this was super fun and sweet. I did enjoy it. It was a very fast-paced read. Could have read it in one sitting. I give it a 3.5-star rating. We're almost done, you guys. Just a few more books to go. The Coven by Harper Woods. I just kind of picked this up on a whim and it was pretty good. It is about a witch and a vessel of like a demon, which witches and vessels are mortal enemies, do not get along whatsoever, but they do kind of coexist at the school, and they have a like regulation of a sort where the witches and the vessels will be there together because the vessels feed off of the witches. Again, I don't really know why they have this alliance, but our main character, who has kind of been hiding from the witch coven her whole life, gets discovered and they take her to the coven, and her and the headmaster, which is a vessel, end up having this weird romantic relationship together. I don't know, this one was definitely a little bit different, very spicy, like a lot spicier than I thought it was going to be, but it thoroughly entertained me the whole time. So I gave it a 3-star rating. Out on a Limb. Oh my gosh, this is definitely my favorite read of the month. I would give it 6 stars if I could. This is about Wynn and Beau, who meet at Wynn's best friend's Halloween party that she has every single year. And they end up hitting it off right away when they meet because Wynn has some sort of like disorder with her hand where it is much smaller than it's supposed to be. And then Beau actually had his leg amputated, so he only has one leg. So after they hit things off, they end up hooking up at the Halloween party. And a few weeks later, Wynn discovers she is pregnant. This book was so sweet. It's really just going through the motions of her being pregnant. Every chapter almost is like a new week of pregnancy. So let's say chapter 9 is her 9th week of pregnancy, chapter 10 is her 10th week, stuff like that. And seeing their dynamic, because Beau is very excited about the baby, but Wynn is kind of like unsure of herself, and it's really sad, honestly, that she's so unsure of her capabilities. But Beau is there every step of the way. He is so sweet, probably one of my favorite male main characters, and he's so nerdy and so sweet. He reminds me so much of my own husband. I think that's why I love him so much. He's just so caring. He reassures Wynn every single day, and even though they're not like together, he's still there for her. And my last read of the month of August was If We Ever Meet Again by Anna Huang. This book is about Farah and Blake, and it's really interesting because in the prologue, you basically like find out that they're together, but they break up because of something. So the whole book, you're kind of going through the beginning of their friendship and then their relationship, and everything seems like it's going so well, and you're just sitting there thinking like, why are they gonna break up? Why does Blake do what he did in that prologue? And then you find out, and you're like, At least for me, I didn't see it coming. While I didn't feel like there was too much depth to Farah, I do think Blake had a little bit of depth to him, and it did keep me entertained. It is a very, very fast-paced book, easy to read, but not like life-changing in any way. This is the first book of the If Love series, which I think book 1 and 2 are a duet, and then books 3 and 4 are just standalones. So book 2 will continue Farah and Blake's story. So I am very interested to see what is all gonna play out in that book. But overall, I did give this book a 3-star rating. I had some very good reads in the month of August. Hopefully we'll keep that up in September, and definitely stay tuned for my September TBR video. Make sure to like this video if you enjoyed it, and subscribe to my channel if you want to see more book content. And if you want to catch me somewhere else on the internet, check out my link tree down below, and I will see you guys in my next video.